I'll never leave Olivia, she's pregnant with my child. His words landed like knives, slicing the air between us with an arrogance that left no room for shame. He leaned back casually, as if he hadn't just shattered years of promises, as if he were delivering the weather report. His smirk was slow, deliberate, the kind that said he believed he had won. But I didn't give him the reaction he wanted. Instead, I lifted the porcelain cup to my lips, fingers steady despite the storm erupting inside me. The tea was lukewarm now, but I let it slide down my throat as though I were savoring it. Interesting, I murmured, the single word as calm as still water. No tremble in my voice, no crack, no plea. Just ice. His eyes narrowed, the smirk faltering for half a heartbeat before he caught himself. He had been expecting drama. Tears, rage, begging, maybe even the kind of scene Olivia would have given him, clutching at his sleeve, demanding to know why. But that wasn't me. I would not perform grief for his entertainment. Inside, though, I was drowning. The betrayal wasn't new, I had sensed it long before he confirmed it. The late nights, the unexplained silences, the lingering scent of perfume that wasn't mine. But hearing it aloud, hearing him not only admit it but say it with pride, carved wounds deeper than suspicion ever could. He hadn't just betrayed me. He had mocked me. I kept my face blank, but my mind was racing. Olivia, her name alone tasted bitter now. She wasn't a stranger to me, not some faceless woman from the shadows. She had once stood close enough to share secrets with me, close enough to borrow my lipstick, close enough to smile too brightly at him when she thought I wasn't looking. I had known all along, but like so many women in love, I had lied to myself. Told myself I was imagining it. Told myself he would never. Yet here he was, confirming it with a smirk. Confirming it while casually mentioning a child. Her child, his child. The future I had once imagined was no longer mine. It belonged to her now. I placed the cup gently on the saucer, the soft clink echoing in the tense silence. He shifted in his chair, clearly uncomfortable with my composure. He wanted me to break. He needed me to crumble to justify his betrayal. But the more he waited, the calmer I became. Because in that moment, something shifted inside me. Something sharp, something alive. Betrayal doesn't always destroy you immediately. Sometimes, it ignites you. When he left that night, Olivia waiting for him in a car parked outside, I stood at the window and watched. The headlights cut across the driveway, and I saw her silhouette in the passenger seat, her hand already resting on her belly. He got into the car without hesitation, without even glancing back. That was the moment I realized I had never truly known the man I had loved. Or maybe I had known him, and I just hadn't wanted to see. I didn't cry, not then, not when the car disappeared into the distance. Not when the silence of the house wrapped around me. I sat back down, poured myself another cup of tea, and let the bitterness of the leaves seep into me. My tears would come later, in the stillness of the night when no one could see, but right then, I refused to give him the satisfaction of my despair. The next morning, I dressed carefully, choosing a navy blouse and a skirt that hugged me just right. I painted my lips a shade of red I hadn't worn in years. When I walked into the office, heads turned. My colleagues smiled, greeted me warmly, oblivious to the wreckage of my heart. To them, I was still the composed, graceful woman who had it all. A perfect marriage, a stable life, a man who adored her. If only they knew, but I preferred it that way. Let the world think I was untouched. Let him think I was unbothered. That was my weapon, silence. Silence that spoke louder than screams ever could. That night, as I sat by the window again, the house felt different. Quieter, emptier, but in that emptiness, I found clarity. I thought of the years I had given him. The sacrifices, the way I had bent myself to fit into his world, his schedule, his moods. How I had silenced my own dreams so his could shine brighter. How I had ignored my intuition, silenced my suspicions, all because I wanted to believe in us. And now, there was no us. There was him and Olivia. And me, alone. But being alone didn't scare me. Not anymore. What scared me was the idea of losing myself even further, of letting his betrayal define the rest of my life. No, I wouldn't allow it. I had been underestimated long enough. I began to take small steps. I went back to writing, the passion I had abandoned years ago when life with him consumed all my time. At first, the words came haltingly, like a stream struggling to break through stone. But soon, they flowed, raw and furious, pouring out of me like wildfire. My pain became paragraphs, my betrayal became stories. I wrote until the sun rose, the glow of my laptop the only light in the room. I met friends I hadn't seen in years. Rekindled connections I had let fade while I was busy playing the perfect wife. With every laugh, every shared meal, I felt a piece of myself return. A piece he had chipped away at slowly, almost imperceptibly, until I had forgotten who I was before him. One evening, weeks later, I caught my reflection in the mirror and hardly recognized the woman staring back. She wasn't broken, she wasn't desperate, she wasn't even angry anymore. She was steady, strong, alive, and that scared him more than anything else. The first time he saw me after that, really saw me, was at a mutual friends gathering. I walked in wearing a dress that draped elegantly, not for him, not for anyone else, but for me. My smile was genuine, my laughter unforced. He was there with Olivia, who clung to his arm, her belly rounding beneath a fitted dress. But for once, it was he who seemed uneasy, watching me from across the room as if I were someone he couldn't quite place. And maybe I was, because the woman he had betrayed, the woman he had thought would collapse without him, no longer existed. In her place stood someone stronger, someone freer. He approached me that night, the smirk gone, his voice uncertain. "You've changed," he said, as if the idea startled him. I sipped my champagne slowly, meeting his gaze with a calm he couldn't shake. "No," I replied softly. "I just remembered who I was before I met you." And for the first time, it was his turn to feel the sting of silence. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized something. The story wasn't about him anymore. It wasn't about Olivia either. It was about me, about the woman who chose herself over betrayal, who chose peace over chaos, who chose to rise instead of break. The hook of this story isn't the betrayal. It isn't even the smug confession. The hook is what comes after, the quiet revenge of rebuilding, of glowing so brightly that regret becomes his constant shadow. He thought I would fall. Instead, I learned how to fly. And if you think you know where this story ends, wait. Because nothing hurts a man more than watching the woman he once underestimated walk away stronger than he could ever handle. The weeks that followed his smug confession were like walking barefoot through fire. Every corner of my life seemed to whisper his betrayal back at me. Friends invited us both to gatherings, and when I declined, I knew the whispers began. I could almost hear them. "She must be devastated. Did you hear about Olivia? Poor thing. Imagine being replaced like that." I hated their pity almost as much as I hated his arrogance. But what I hated most of all was how easily he believed I'd be erased. He didn't just betray me. He paraded it. He walked beside Olivia as though she were a medal he had earned, her laughter always just loud enough for me to hear. And when her hand brushed over her stomach, I caught the glance he gave her, the kind of glance he once gave me when the future felt like ours. It should have gutted me. But instead, it steeled me. I told myself over and over, I will not break in front of them. I will not give them my tears. And I didn't. What he never understood was that pain, when used wisely, sharpens you. It strips away illusions, forcing you to see yourself and the world without the rose-colored haze of love. For the first time in years, I saw clearly. I saw the lies I had chosen to ignore, the little betrayals I had brushed aside, the way I had silenced my own needs just to keep him satisfied. Betrayal was brutal, yes, but it was also freeing. It freed me from a prison I hadn't even realized I was in. So, I began again. I poured myself into my work like it was oxygen. Every project, every meeting, every late-night brainstorming session was no longer a chore, it was an escape. But more than that, it was a reclamation. I was no longer shrinking myself to make space for his ego. I was no longer dimming my light so his could shine brighter. I started saying yes to opportunities I would have once turned down. People noticed. They saw the fire in me, a fire that had been hidden under the weight of his shadow. Colleagues pulled me aside. "You seem different lately, you're glowing, you look stronger." And they were right, but strength doesn't mean the nights weren't lonely. They were. Sometimes I'd sit by the window, a cup of tea in hand, and let the silence settle around me like a heavy cloak. The memories of us together would crawl back, and for a moment, the tears would come. Silent, bitter tears for the years I could never get back. But then I'd remind myself, those years weren't wasted, they were lessons. Lessons about who I was, who I could be, and what I would never again allow. It wasn't easy seeing them together. One night, at a mutual friend's gala, I walked in and instantly felt the weight of their presence. Olivia stood there in a shimmering gown, her belly round beneath the fabric, her hand proudly displayed on his arm. They looked like a picture-perfect couple, and I knew that was the image he wanted the world to see. He wanted people to forget me. He wanted me erased. But when his eyes landed on me across the room, something flickered. I wasn't wearing desperation anymore. I wasn't hiding in shame. I wore confidence like a second skin, my smile unforced, my laughter genuine. I had walked into that room not as the woman he left behind, but as the woman who had risen in spite of him. And for the first time since his smug confession, I saw it, the regret in his eyes. Brief, fleeting, but real. It was Olivia who held his arm tighter, as though she could sense the shift in his gaze. And that was the moment I realized, she hadn't won. Not really. She had him, yes, but she also had his lies, his vanity, his selfishness. She had inherited everything I had been freed from. And in that realization, I felt something I never thought I'd feel, pity. Pity for the woman who thought she was walking into a fairy tale, not realizing she had stepped into a storm. Later that night, he found me in the garden. The music from inside drifted through the open doors, but the air between us was heavy. He looked at me, searching, his smirk nowhere to be found. "You've changed," he said softly, almost like an accusation. I held his gaze, the calm in me stronger than any rage could ever be. "No," I said, my voice steady. "I just remembered who I was before I met you." The silence that followed was louder than any argument we had ever had. He had no answer, because he knew I was right. For years, I had been the woman who revolved around him, who molded herself into what he needed. But that woman was gone. And what stood before him now was untouchable. I turned and walked away, my steps slow, deliberate, my heart steady. I didn't need to look back to know he was still watching me. I didn't need to wonder if he regretted his choices. Because regret was now his burden, not mine. As weeks turned into months, I built a life that was mine and mine alone. I found joy in little things again, the smell of fresh coffee in the morning, the sound of rain tapping against the window, the laughter of friends who loved me for who I was, not for the role I played in someone else's life. I learned to dance alone in my living room. I learned to take myself out to dinner without feeling self-conscious. I learned that solitude wasn't emptiness, it was freedom. And then came the greatest revelation of all, I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to prove to him that I was better off. My existence, my happiness, my survival, that was revenge enough. Because nothing unsettles a man more than the sight of the woman he thought would fall, standing taller than ever. Sometimes, life doesn't give us the endings we imagine. Sometimes it shatters the story halfway through and forces us to rewrite it. I thought my story was about him and me, about the home we'd build, the family we'd create. But I was wrong. My story was always about me, about the woman I would become when tested, about the strength I never knew I had until betrayal carved it out of me. So here's the truth, the hook that binds this entire story together. Betrayal may break your heart, but it can also rebuild your soul. And sometimes, the ending you fear the most is the beginning you deserve the most. If you ever find yourself in the place I was, sitting across from someone smirking at your pain, telling you they've chosen someone else, don't break. Don't beg. Don't give them your tears. Sip your tea, steady your hands, and say, interesting. Because in that single word lies the promise of your rebirth. And when they least expect it, you'll rise. And when you rise, they will regret underestimating you for the rest of their lives. Because nothing, absolutely nothing, is more dangerous, more powerful, more unforgettable than a woman who chooses herself. Don't beg for loyalty. Don't chase someone who replaces you like an accessory. When someone betrays you, don't let it end your story, let it begin your rebirth.